Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, and today we are continuing with the Bardstown Bourbon Company Origins bottles that we're taking a look at. The other day, you probably saw the video where we looked at their 96 proof high rye bourbon, and today we're taking a look at their other bourbon. It happens to be a wheated Bottled-In-Bond. So it's 100 proof, still 6 years old, like all of their Origin series products are. And we're looking at a recipe of 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. A lot of folks are really interested in this one, whether they had a chance to try it or they have been able to try it on a tasting or a tour they did at Bardstown Bourbon Company prior to it being ready to taste. Again, this is 100% their own distillate in these products that we're seeing in the Origin series. So a lot of people anticipating these coming out. And honestly, there aren't a whole lot of wheated products on the market in this sort of price range. If there are, if there's ones that you really enjoy, leave me some messages down below. I'd love to hear what it is that you're looking for. But in a world where Weller is not easy to come by, what are other things that are able to compete with products like that on the market? And with this having an SRP of $49.99, can it hang with those? Today, we're gonna find out. Before we get any further though, go ahead, jump down below, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Help me continue to grow the channel as we continue on in 2023. We're gonna go ahead and pour out a little bit of this product. We're gonna nose it and taste it. And honestly, I'm very excited because we're also gonna be putting it up against the Wilderness Trail 6-year Bottled-In-Bond wheated profile as well. As again, I was thinking about what products are close on the market. It just so happens that there was another craft distiller, 6 years aged, wheated Bottled-In-Bond product on the market. And we're talking about a $25 difference between the two of them. So we're gonna dive into the Bardstown Bourbon Company first, make a quick comparison over the Wilderness Trail, and then we'll come back and sum everything up. So let's go ahead and give a little bit a look before we get into the nose and taste. Really similar color, I would say, to the high rye. The high rye is a little lighter in color, but it still kind of has this golden hue to it. And then we're kind of watching those legs a little bit just to see what they do. Not super slow, but honestly, fairly nice size for a 100 proof product. Man, it really starts to come alive though on that nose. The nose here is like an espresso brownie dipped in orange marmalade. I feel like overall it's a little bit more lower tone, a little bit more earthy compared to the high rye bourbon, but it's not overly earthy. It doesn't get into, let's say, the Rebel 100 territory, which is what I was fearful maybe it would do. It still has kind of those spiced wheat cinnamon grain notes, but really the star of the show is this kind of apple crispness meets the spicy saturated orange note. And then again, with the kind of underlying layers of kind of like a rich espresso and brownie mix. Let's go ahead and dive in on the palate here. Similar to the high rye bourbon, it's soft on the palate, but it's much more oily than the high rye bourbon was. It just starts right away with juicy apple notes, still a little bit of peach, stone fruit-like sweetness to it as well. You have these sugary honeyed notes. It's not quite brown sugar, but it is kind of like a confectioner sweetness, a honey-like note. And then it lingers with a malty chocolate covered orange, a little bit of lemon curd or like a lemon donut. Then it moves into a spearmint spiciness combined with a little bit of like a cinnamon butter that you'd put on rolls at a steakhouse or something like that. It still carries this drying charred oak, wood, sweet oak presence in the finish. Not overly oaky, but definitely has kind of like a bruleed, it's like a sugary bruleed oak tone as it lingers into the finish. Still has those coffee tones in there, not as prominent. What really kind of lingers lasting on the palate is that kind of orange and that kind of spiced bruleed sugary oak note. Let's go ahead and jump quickly over here to that Wilderness Trail just for comparison. And I mean, the nose of the Wilderness Trail is super easy to peg. It's like a chocolate, oaky, slightly fruity oatmeal cream pie thing going on. Let's go ahead and dive into the wilderness. Yeah, the palate starts initially in that same sort of trajectory, but then it adds these leathery, kind of medicinal licorice notes, a little bit of cherry, maybe a little cola in there, with this sort of savory toasted oak lingering going on. It reminds me of another Wilderness Trail bourbon that I have, but it doesn't happen to be wheated profile. And honestly, these flavors in general kind of remind me of some things I get into maybe some older whiskeys in general. Not exactly flavors I would have expected to have come out of a 6-year Bottled-In-Bond craft wheated product, but very viscous on the palate. A lot of nice richness combined with the flavors I just mentioned. Let's go ahead and transition again back to the Bardstown Bourbon Company. Coming back to the Bardstown Bourbon Company again, very clean. The citrus is showing itself even more, but then you get lots of caramel and confectioner sugar. And honestly, coming back to it now, it reminds me a little bit of the Weller products. Not quite the Weller 12, it doesn't have the age. Not quite the Weller 107, it doesn't quite have the heat, but it is less grainy for sure than the Weller Special Reserve. So definitely gives me some aromas that kind of remind me of that kind of Buffalo Trace family of things. Now, I did try and go over to my Old Rip Van Winkle just to see, how close are these? I would say they're pretty different from one another. And if you actually want a nice pour to open up into a night where you're maybe getting into an Old Rip Van Winkle or something like that, this is really going to do the trick. It's going to open up some of the familiar flavors and allow the dominant sugary oak to cut through the Old Rip. But I digress. Let's get back to this Bardstown Bourbon Company. Again, it's elegant, it's softer on the nose, but man, it really just shows how it punches up against some of the other products out there. Yeah, the palate, again, it brings in these kind of warm cinnamon roll, like wheated grain notes. It's not grainy in a super youthful way, but I definitely feel like it has a little bit more grain noticeable than the High Rye Bourbon did. But again, it's that reintroduction of the cherry and this kind of pleasant interwoven oak that makes me think about the Weller line in the first place. These beautiful confectioner sugars, caramels, milk chocolate, that spiced orange in there, it just sits so satisfying and so easy to drink. I think a lot of people are gonna love this. It's not as sweet and fruited as you might notice in the Weller line, but it's not far behind. Guys, again, I am pretty happy with this, not just for the category of wheated bourbon, which for sure can be said, but again, coming in at this $49.99 price point, I don't think that you're gonna find a lot of products that are gonna be able to go toe-to-toe with this. And if you do, I'd love to hear about them down below. I'd love to hear if there's other comparisons that you all would think would be a good fit for trying out against this Bottled-In-Bond Wheated. But I know a lot of people, a lot of you all are really going to enjoy this product. And like I mentioned about the High Rye Bourbon, you're going to see this product on people's end of the year list in terms of just overall good everyday products they're getting from the end of the year for just solid bourbons that they were able to find throughout the year. We're going to see this as a through line throughout 2023. So what a great way to start off the year. And I'm just excited to see a product like this kind of enter the market, into this territory where we don't see a lot of other products either close to it in price point or in terms of its specs. If you've tried this Bottled-In-Bond Wheated product from the Bardstown Origin series, let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below. Until our next video, thanks everybody for tuning in once again, and we'll see you all later.